Hi, my name is Ed.
And I'm Sabine.
And welcome to the first episode of our video series. Hopefully a long-term video series, right?
Absolutely, very excited.
Well, I suppose there's quite a few topics on our mind, right? Mainly HR, entrepreneurship, work-related topics, I'd say, right? I mean, we're not going to sort of talk about everything. We're always open to suggestions, of course, but we wanted to really sort of dive straight into it today. We recently posted a video about counter offers, right? So for those that don't know, when someone's looking to leave their job, the company in which they're currently working, obviously they go and present their resignation and say, look, received another offer. And that's when things get a bit complicated for people, obviously, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what might happen is that the current employer is obviously not too happy to have that resignation letter on their desk. So they might come in with a counter offer for the candidate.
Sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, which obviously is great.
Yeah.
You have options, but also it can put candidates in a bit of a difficult position sometimes. They don't really know what to do. They start doubting maybe their initial decision, right?
Absolutely.
And so you gave some really good advice already in your short video on how to navigate that. And I think today we just wanted to chat a little bit more about the topic and share our experience and what we see sort of happening in the market. And
absolutely. No, we were really delighted to get your comments. I mean, we didn't realize we'd get so much feedback on it. And I suppose this is something that affects everyone, right? So, unless you're an entrepreneur, but even then, I suppose you can resign from being your own boss. But you're going to find yourself in a position whereby you're looking for a new opportunity, which is completely normal. There's no judgment on that. We've all done it. I've resigned in the past. You've resigned in the past as well. And so what makes it a bit difficult is the time that you actually go to resign, right? So people get really nervous. They're like, I feel bad about this. These are the people that gave me an opportunity. I've been working at this company for X amount of years. They were the ones that believed in me. Next thing you know, you're sort of going in there with your letter or, getting your courage as such and saying, look, this is the end of the road. I mean, what do you think of that, I suppose?
Absolutely. No, I understand that it can be super difficult because even if you're super excited about the new opportunity and you've made your decision and for whatever reason, you said, look, my time at this company and this position has just come up, to an end, and it's sort of a natural development for me to go elsewhere. What can still be a bit rough is that even though you might not see yourself in that position anymore, doesn't mean that you don't like the people around you anymore, right? Like maybe you were really, really well in touch with the HR manager. You really appreciate your
made some good friends there as well.
Good friends at the company, and then it was just like such a big part of your life still, and also these relationships that you've built over the time that it can still feel a little bit awkward to go in and say like bye bye, that's it, right? And I think that's where people sort of
look. It's a super awkward situation to be in. And I think anyone that doesn't feel awkward about it, then it's got nerves of steel. More on that in the next episode. Only joking, but genuinely, I think there's things probably that you can make easier for yourself, right? So I think obviously I'd only recommend people to resign when they're sure of their decision. I think that's the first step, because I think often what you get is people resigning, but kind of like testing the response of their boss and or the way they sort of react. And some people, I'd say cynically, also resign in the hope of getting an actual raise, and getting an increase or at least matching the offer. So I think if you're going in there with the right intentions and you've thought about it long and hard, it's a mature decision. You've had sleepless nights over it probably. Then I think you're already in a good situation to actually handle whatever comes your way, right? I mean, we've all had sleepless nights about big decisions, and I think resignations are sort of one of those big decisions as well.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I think you made a really interesting point there about like already being sure of your decision, and not using counter offers as just like a mere way to negotiate a better salary where you're at. And I think that also goes into the same idea of not just going out into the job market to test your market value, right?
Absolutely.
Some people have this idea of, I'm not really looking to leave, I'm actually comfortable where I am, but let me just, send out a few applications just to see what I could get out there to then put it in front of
But then they end up getting a job.
Exactly, and then they get really surprised actually, they're like, oh, now I'm in this position and there is actually an opportunity, so what do I do next? And sometimes this spontaneity can be like great and really exciting, but also it can then put you in a place where you're a bit like, okay, like what
100%.
do I do now? I haven't actually thought this through, and then it obviously also gets difficult to negotiate and feel comfortable in your negotiating.
Well, it goes really quick, doesn't it? I mean, you sort of apply for a job. Who's done that? You just send your CV. You get a first round interview, second round. You're meeting the big boss, and then you get an offer through the email or whatever, through a phone call, and you're like, oh no, I've actually got to make decisions, right? So things can go really quickly. And I think things are getting quicker in the market because more competition going on in terms of poaching people, whatever. So once you're at that stage, look, I mean, as a candidate, you're always free to refuse an offer or to accept an offer. I think we're clear about that. Obviously, if your contract allows you to go and work for a competitor, or it doesn't, obviously you have to always respect the clauses of competes or whatever. Or, hence why people go on gardening leave, as we say in the UK. You're actually not sitting in a garden, but you're technically meant to be at home and available if someone calls you to come and finish off some work. So that's what we call gardening leave. And I think what happens is that when people go in, to these negotiations, they say, look, here's my resignation. In an ideal world, your employer asks you why. And I suppose you see that a lot in your work as well in terms of exits.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about HR strategy and sort of, putting exit processes in place, or when we just talk about talent retention strategy with clients, I more and more see also the necessity of putting in place a good exit strategy. So what happens from the moment an employee or like a team member tells us that they want to leave? Because I think that whole communication process is super important, because if it comes as a huge surprise and completely out of the blue, then we also need to look at ourselves as a company and say, okay, is there something in our feedback culture, in our communication, that we missed out on? Why is this resignation such a surprise to us? So often, you have to look backwards a little bit to see what.
And it's hard to see. I mean, look, I feel bad for employers sometimes because they've sort of got X amount of employees. They can't keep tabs on every single person's mood or how they're feeling, right? And sometimes it genuinely is a surprise. Someone's very happy where they are, and then a headhunter or someone comes knocking on the door. Next thing you know, they're leaving, right? And sometimes there's nothing you could have done. But in most cases, there's signs, right? So if you're seeing someone that's actually not talking to any colleagues anymore, or sort of, not being their usual self, or taking a lot of absence during the week, a lot of medical appointments. I mean, obviously, medical appointments can happen, but if you start seeing a pattern of people becoming less and less, implicated in the company, then it's worth seeing, what's going on. Is there anything you want to talk about? And is there anything that we can do as a company? And you can sort of address that before it's too late, right?
Of course, absolutely. That's the ideal scenario. I think sometimes, as you mentioned, especially with maybe larger businesses, or there's time doesn't allow you to keep an eye on every team member just because there's a lot going on. And some people are really good at masking this part as well, right? So you might actually feel that they are, completely happy, completely satisfied, but in their mind they're completely elsewhere. And I think that's 100%. Sort of, a dangerous between bracket situations as well, because you can miss a lot of things there. So what I always advise my clients is to just put in place a strong process or procedure of communication, of regular feedback. Have those employee satisfaction surveys, have regular check-in sessions, a 360-degree feedback. Regularly every year or every 6 months if you can, just to be in constant communication, because that will allow you to detect little things a lot earlier on that might down the line snowball and lead to a resignation that wouldn't have happened had you had a conversation earlier on.
100%. I mean, this is what you do every day, right?
Yeah, that's sort of,
so you can see the signs and the symptoms of things going on behind the scenes. And sort of talking of the counter offer, so what tends to happen is you go and see your employer in real terms, so it can give you a simulation, and they say, look, take some time to think about it, because we don't want to lose you, and what's the other offer that you've received? And you might say, I've received X amount, and they say, look, don't worry, we really value you, and we want to keep you, and in fact, we've got a new role coming up for you, we've got more responsibilities, and so on. So, most likely, if you're doing a good job there, and they really want to keep you, they will probably either match what you've received as an offer, which is why we call it the counter offer, and probably increase, your responsibilities and so on and so forth. Now, I don't want to say that's a bad idea to sort of stay, but typically, right, if you're someone that's actually serious and that you're resigning for the right reasons and you receive another offer, then there's probably something in you that says, look, I'm not necessarily satisfied where I am. Because I think money, I'd hope that money isn't the only driver for these situations, and actually people are looking at the bigger picture. Of their comfort where they are, and their relationships with their colleagues, and whether or not they have a job satisfaction. So I'm a bit sort of wary of that. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it goes into sort of understanding where your initial motivation to leave the job comes from, and was it only a money question? As in, have you asked for a raise, on the last 3 occasions, and the company said, no, not happening, no budget, really sorry, and then you receive another, largely increased offer, then yes, that will be your motivation to leave, and then it's going to be very difficult for them to make you stay. But if you had a different type of intrinsic motivation, maybe to say I wanted to explore maybe a different type of market, or I've worked on a specific product maybe for the last decade, and now I'm excited, to work on a different type of product, or maybe I've been, agency side, now I want to move client side, things like that really have a massive impact on shaping your career. Then I think no matter what counter offer they present you with, and they might even offer you more than the potential 100%. New employer, they will never be able to satisfy what you were looking for,
Well, it's going to come back. Look, often what I see is people tend to sort of accept the counter offers and stay where they are, right?
Okay.
Which I think is a very normal thing for humans to do, right? So it's a comfort zone. They probably feel more attached, and it's probably the safer bet. So they get, they say, look, actually, I've got no regrets because they're matching the salary that I was going to be offered in the other company. So you're not feeling that stressed about saying, oh, I've missed out financially. And on top of that, they say, oh, better the devil you know sometimes, right? So it's better to know, I know what to expect in this company. But the problem is, and this is what I see time and time again, is that the issues that you were looking to leave for, the reasons that have pushed you to resign, they will come back in 3 to 6 months. They will come back in 9 months. And also from the employer side, they will remember that you've tried to resign. And I'm not saying that they will never forget it and that's it, that's the end of the relationship. But they'll put it in the back of their mind and say, look, this was a bit of a scare. And so let's look for plan B. When you say that?
Right, okay. So you feel that even though it might have sort of gone through this time around and we managed to make them accept the counter offer, there's still sort of like something in the back of their mind that stays where they're like, okay, we're not actually really sure.
Well, look, I wouldn't say they're going to change the whole strategy, but they're like, if they manage to convince you to stay, I think that somewhere, if they're a serious employer and a serious company that's looking, for talent retention and looking to the future, they'll say, we got away with that one.
Right.
And, we can't afford to be in a position where we have no plan B. So they might give you a chance to say, look, these things happen, you try to leave or she tried to leave and we kept them and retained them. But I think they might always have it in the back of their mind that if they do that again, what do we do next time?
Okay.
And so the relationship does change a tiny bit, especially in big multinationals. They start looking at sort of plan Bs and sort of career development and talent retention. And, if that person leaves, who do we bring in and whatever. So maybe in family companies it's different. Smaller companies, there's more sort of agility. Multinationals will probably say that's a bit of a risk. Let's keep an eye on that person.
Okay, right. So that's interesting that you mentioned that because maybe a large multinational will sort of, hedge their bets and say, okay, how can we, do this in case this happens again? Whereas maybe a family business sometimes, just because they also tend to have maybe traditionally close-knit relationships between the employees, they might play more on the emotional relationship 100%. Card, right? Where they're like, have you seen that happen?
Oh my God, I've seen it so much. And people feel bad. Look, I mean, forget my business perspective or me as a recruiter, whatever. It's normal if someone says to you, look, we really believe in you and we've known you for X amount of years and you're part of the family. And it could be the wider family or they even might consider you as part of the family business and might have big plans for you. That's a strong argument. Humans want belonging, they want l'appartenance, they want to feel part of something. So I can understand people saying, actually, I'm really happy here. And maybe it can bring out a nice discussion, between them where they address some of the issues and it can actually get resolved, right?
So it creates an opportunity as well. And I think it's like old and overused as it sounds, but maybe it brings us back to the point that money isn't everything.
No, it's not.
So, I mean it's like a really old phrase that
No, I mean what?
Used and overused, but
look, I'd say big advice is if you're going to resign, 9 times out of 10, stick to your decision. There's a reason. You've got to trust your intuition as human beings. There's something that's, people don't just go in with a resignation. There's reasons for that, unless there's been a big argument or whatever. But so usually stick to your decision and trust your intuition. And whatever's meant to be is meant to be, I guess, right?